By the time he had reached the age of 15, the tension between Kurt and his father came to a head. Kurt opted to leave Montesano, and in the spring of 1982, he returned to Aberdeen to live with his mother. He enrolled in the sophomore year at Weatherwax High School.
I think he wanted to leave this area just because of his life here. I mean, he had to my extent, was an awful childhood. I mean, basically ignored all your life, and then the only time you talk to is getting yelled at.
In Montesano, he was almost kind of a jock. He was a popular kid. Girls liked him. He turned out for a couple of sports. He moved to Aberdeen, and he knew hardly anyone in school, and he became a rebel. The only way he really could fit into that school was to become a stoner, and that's what he became that fall.
I met Kurt in 10th grade when I was probably 15 years old, and I'd flunked history the year before, and they said, if you don't want to retake 9th grade history, there's one option. You can take 12th grade business law. And I said, fine, I'll take 12th grade business law. And I went into the classroom, and as usual, I made my way to the very back row, to the very back corner, so no one was behind me or anything. And I looked over, and there's this other kid that I recognized, little blonde guy, sitting next to me. And I could tell he wasn't in the 12th grade. And he had Motorhead written on his peachy with all the other bands of the day, Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and such. And I said, hey, you like Motorhead? And he opened his peachy, and he had all these cut-out pictures of different bands, guitar players. He had a picture of Lemmy Kilminster from Motorhead flipping off a Ronald McDonald statue. And I said, hey, that's awesome. And from then on, we were just we hung out quite a bit. We had lots of fun together. We drank constantly. He drank. He didn't have a stomach problem then. So,
I saw him as bipolar. I mean, you know, he could be
down,
creative and happy, and we were putting together a great party plan, and then other times we'd have a great party plan, but he wants nothing to do with it just for the sake of having nothing to do with it. So
he didn't like to socialize, and that's where him and Dale Krober both dropped out of school at the end of 10th grade, and I stayed in just for social reasons.
Yeah, me too.
And we'd all go to the parties, the local parties, and he didn't want to have anything to do with the rest of the rednecks around this town. And we were all like, well, there's rednecks, what the hell, you know? That's all there is.
He became a dropout, and he dropped out of school. In fact, one of the more remarkable stories I discovered in doing my book was that he then went to a school that was an alternative school set up for dropouts, and then he dropped out of the dropout school.
He was going to pretend he was mentally retarded so he could get a free high school diploma and go to the retarded class.
Yeah, I remember.
And he was sure that would be an easy way to get through high school and not have to do anything but grunt and moan. Yeah. And it never came to fruition.
Yeah.
In April 1984, Kurt's relationship with his parents suffered another breakdown. After a colossal fight at their home in Aberdeen, Wendy told Kurt to leave the house. At just 17 years of age, Kurt became homeless, a period made famous by the Nirvana record Something in the Way.
At that point, he became sort of a kid adrift. He spent a lot of time homeless. That's the era where he talked about living under a bridge, which in my research probably was mythical. He did live a number of places in Aberdeen other than in his mother's house, but under that bridge was not something that he ever, spent many nights under there. If he did, it was one or two, not the months that he seemed to indicate in telling his own personal history.
He never lived under a bridge. It wasn't the 60s. There's a bridge, the bridge going out to like Lance's house, out to Bear Gulch. Right. He used to like smoke pot under there, and if he was staying out too late, he would have to wait until his stepdad left his mom's house before he could go in. So he'd wait under there, but he never lived under a bridge. That was total fiction, total bullshit.
Right.
He was too savvy. He lived, the worst place he ever lived, I think, was the back seat of Greg Hokinson's mom's Volvo. But other than that, he was a savvy homeless person. He would go wait in the waiting rooms of the hospital because there was free coffee and a color TV. You could act like you were waiting for a dying relative.
His family were around. They were never not part of his life, but he would go weeks without seeing them. His father tells stories of at one point, getting a phone call from his mother saying, I haven't seen Kurt for a couple of weeks. And his dad tells a pretty compelling story of driving around the streets of Aberdeen looking for his son, then finally finding him and taking him home for a few days. And then Kurt would be back off on his own. So there were, it wasn't exactly as if his family abandoned him. In some ways, it was more Kurt rejected every aspect of his family, and he rejected them. They say, all of them, that they made attempts to keep him within the nucleus of the family. But at the same time, I also understand that it was hard to be around him. He was, at that point, very down on everything. He was very cynical, and he was abusing drugs. Basically, anything he could find, he would put into his body, and that included alcohol, it included LSD, it included methamphetamine. Kurt later claimed he took heroin during that period. My research for my book, I couldn't find a person that knew of any heroin coming through Aberdeen, but it is possible he took narcotic prescription drugs that maybe he'd ripped off from somebody's house, and he claimed that that was heroin, but I don't think he was using injection drugs at that point. But he was not living a healthy lifestyle. He was putting anything in his system. He was trying to blot out and not be present. And that kind of became his life.
We were really, 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 really heavy drinkers and heavy substance abusers at really young ages, and Kurt was too.
And vandalizing.
Kurt liked to he would huff isobutane out of the bottom of Ed's shaving gel, and he'd get these horrible head rushes and almost twitch on the ground, but he kept doing it. He made this big apparatus to huff isobutane out of the bottom of Ed's shaving grid gel, and he declared himself addicted to Ed's shaving gel at one point.